Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I'm your host, Kristen Bednars, and welcome to the Power of Purposeful Parenting. Our many experts are here to help us on our journeys to becoming more confident, calm, and joyful parents. We do this by diving deep into the physical and social emotional realms of development, allowing ourselves to drop our expectations and just be truly present each moment with our children. And finally, by building a community of trusted experts where you can turn when your many questions arise. Parenting was never meant to be done alone, so allow us to navigate this journey with you, offering guidance, support, and giving ourselves grace when things don't go as planned. Today, I'm so excited to be here with Barbara Milne. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Kristen. I'm so happy to be here with you and with everybody else as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And I just have to tell everyone a little bit of background of how I got to know Barbara. When I was very, very young, Barbara is a singer of some amazing children's music. And when I was a little girl, actually a baby, my mom would play Barbara's CD, though I guess at that time it was a cassette player, not even a CD, for me every night as I would fall asleep, and I would listen to it throughout the night. And we did that for quite a few years. And then when I had my first little one, my mom upgraded and purchased Barbara's music in CD form and brought it over. And when she pressed play, I just stopped and I looked at her and I was like, how do I know this music? Where have I heard this before? I know these songs. And that's when she told me that I listened to this music when I was very, very young as well. And that right there is the power of music. And now my little ones have the privilege of listening to your CDs every night as they fall asleep. So Barbara, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your background and your journey and how you came to write such wonderful children's songs.
Well, I was a first grade teacher for a long time. And then when I had my baby, I thought, oh, I really want her to be as happy as she can be when she gets to school. And I loved singing. I've loved singing all my life. And so I used to sing to her all the time, and I would make up little songs about counting and going, just fun little things. And she loved it, and then she would even sing a little bit. In fact, there is a song on my CD, I Love You So Much. And that song actually came from Taylor when she was 3. She was singing in the back seat of the car. And she was going, I love you so much. I love you so much. I can't even tell you how much I love you. And I thought, those are the sweetest words. And I checked at her school to see if they had some little song, I love you so much. And they said, we don't have anything like that. And so I thought, oh my gosh, she's making that song up for her mom. And I thought, I've got to make that into a song. And that's been one of the really beloved songs on my music that people oftentimes sing to their kids at night when they go to bed.
We sing that quite a bit, and I never knew the story behind it. That is such an amazing story, and I love that your daughter inspired that. So your music has been teaching children for over 40 years. What have you learned about how powerful music can be in education?
Well, I'll tell you this, I had no idea that those little songs that I made up for Taylor were going to be so popular in places all over the world. Now we have speech therapists who say, oh, we really value this music. It's so helpful with children's diction and teaching them how to say the sounds correctly. And then we have autistic children who are so attracted to the music because of the rhythm and the slowness of it. And then even in classrooms, in preschool classrooms, in first grade, even in some areas, and definitely in kindergarten when they're learning letter sounds. So many teachers all over the world are using that music.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important to understand is why music is so powerful. And it's good to know that it's unlike language, that music affects our brain and makes very strong and enduring connections in a way that just spoken language does not do. And it's also good to know that when babies are born, they have 100,000 genes, which sounds like a lot, and it certainly is a blueprint for what their life will be like. But we have 100 million neurons, and those are connections that have the potential to be connected, But if they're not, then they, they'll be sloughing away. There's natural sloughing away, but so the more that parents can interact with their children, and if they use music too, they can make these strong, enduring connections and use them for teaching at the same time without having a child feel any kind of pressure about that whole process. I think it's wonderful how you hear about moms who are pregnant and they play my music on their belly, and then they talk about how their baby is so comforted when they play the music after their child is born. And I love the story of my grandson. We were at a baby shower and my daughter was still nursing then, so she wanted to take him along. And he got so fussy, so I took him out and I was trying to settle him down and I wasn't having great success. And then I started singing some of my songs that he had had in his life. And he looked at me with his big eyes and he was so happy. And he just immediately stopped crying and was very calmed down. So it definitely has a power.
It absolutely does. I know even for me with my little ones, if we're having a fussy moment, sometimes turning on music can just, it's like a light bulb, and they get excited and they bob their heads to the beat. They bob their heads to the beat quite often at meal times. They always like to have music on while they're eating and different things like that. And music is just such a wonderful thing to bring into children's lives. So I know you do recordings of nursery rhymes and ABCs, and overall those are very popular recordings, but your music is a little bit different. Would you tell us about that?
Well, I've listened to so many other recordings, and for example, with nursery rhymes, you hear a lot of them where they go through all these verses of nursery rhymes. Well, little children really need simplicity. And so one thing that's very different about my music is that if I sing a nursery rhyme, I sing the most famous verse and I sing it 3 times in a row. And to an adult ear, they think, oh my gosh, this is boring. But I didn't make this music for adults. I made it for Taylor to help her go to bed at night. So that's one reason it's slow. That's one reason why I have a lot of repetition. And one of the things that one story I just love was this father. He was with a 2-year-old. There was the mother and the father. They're in the car. They're driving, and their little guy's in the back seat, and he's in his car seat. He's just raising all kinds of cane, as 2-year-olds are so good at doing.
Oh, yeah.
And the father said, isn't there something you can do to calm him down? And she said, well, yes, I can. She said, but that I have that music that you don't like. And he said, I don't care, put it on. I try anything. So the minute she put my music on, this little guy just kind of calmed down and everything was nice and they're all just happy as could be. And that father said, I love that music. So he decided it wasn't so boring after all. I think another thing that is different about my music is that I do have some repetition in there, and I have also a lot of life lessons, mommy type of things. So for example, Taylor would say to me, I want a cookie. And I'd say, oh, you mean, would you like a cookie, please? Or may I have a cookie, please? May I have a cookie, please? And then I thought, that would be a really good song. I think I'll just make up a song about that and put it on her music. And then sometimes she would interrupt me on the telephone. So I made up a song about that, about be polite and leave people all alone. And so I would constantly see different kinds of situations where I could make music for her that would help her learn.
That is such a neat way to do it, because children really do learn when they hear a song, and it's a lot easier to sing it to them than say it to them. Many times they'll respond a lot better. I know we will do that many times, with 3 little ones, 3 and under. We go different ways when we're out on walks and things like that, and we'll sing a little turnaround song when it's time for everyone to turn around and to stay on the sidewalk and things like that. And they just respond so much better to it and so much more happily. And those life lessons are getting ingrained into their little brains that way.
I love that. I love hearing that.
Thank you. So your music has a lot of repetition and a slower, quieter beat. You had mentioned about that. So let's talk about why that is so important for little ones.
Well, one thing that we know is that repetition will bring better learning, and repetition is fast, even with older children's music, because we know that as children get older, they want a more active beat, and they, with older kids, the raps are popular and all that sort of thing. So that's fine. But if there isn't enough repetition in there, they're not going to learn as effectively. So repetition is very powerful. But it also makes children feel more secure, because if they have repetition, they feel more power. That way, for example, if you have a nursery rhyme and then you play it through one time, when they hear it the second time, they're like, well, I heard that and I kind of know a little bit of that. And then when they're hearing it the third time, this is I'm sort of part of this, I really am getting this. And that
Yes.
kinds of repetition helps them not only learn, but also feel very comforted and empowered. I loved it when I was teaching a parenting class. I had a lot of Korean children, and the parents and children were always in the classroom together in this particular program. And so the little kids would get up at circle time, and we had an apple chart for each one of them, because my most famous um, song on my CD is we call it the letter sound song, but it's like apple, apple, ah, 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 apple, apple, ah, ah, ah. So it's repeated 6 times. It's a lot of repetition. But those little Korean children were so happy, because they really didn't understand a lot of English that was being spoken in the classroom, but they knew that. And that was so empowering to them, and they could track along left or right and really feel like they were energized and they were big people and they were learning to read.
That is such a neat story, and just a wonderful way to introduce sounds to little ones. And I know my little ones love that song as well. And especially the one twin, my little boy, he will repeat a lot of sounds and things like that, sometimes with the music and sometimes just other times throughout the day. And and he's done that for quite a while now, where he just likes to repeat all of those sounds. And I think I attribute that to hearing it over and over in that CD every time as they're sleeping.
It is so valuable. And I'll never forget this story about one of my girlfriend's daughters. She was 2. And she'd been listening to the music a lot. And I was over visiting at their house one day, and she's walking around the house and she's going like, table, table, mommy, mommy, and she's naming all these things in her environment. And those particular sounds are not on the CD.
Right.
They're not. So she was just taking that rhythm of the song and the idea that you can do this, and she was naming her environment. And at the same time, that's the very beginning of spelling. If you can say what the first sound is, then all you need is the letter, and then you start going. So I had thought that my song was so boring, I didn't even want to put it on the tape when I finally made my first tape. But after listening to Debbie and hearing what she could do with it, I thought, whoa, this is really valuable. So I definitely wanted to include it.
Yes, and I see why it's one of your most popular songs. I know we love that one as well, and all 3 of my children have listened to that one countless times. So let's talk about how children can get the most benefit from your music.
Well, for sure, you want to be playing it at nap or bedtime, because that's when children have this ability to learn at in a more efficient way. When we're falling asleep, when we're leaving the waking world and going into the sleeping world, our brains are extremely powerful. And I do have information about that, and people can certainly contact me. We have a free handout, and it has a lot of the similarities between my music and something that the Bulgarians did, which is called super learning. They have this whole concept that they can increase a person's power to learn by 5 to 50 times faster. And if people want to, I have a little email address. I don't know, do you provide this at the end?
Yes, we will have a link for that free gift right below. You guys can click the button and access it.
That's great, because It's technical, and what we do is not exactly like that. But when Taylor was learning so much when she was so tiny, that's when I did the research to find out if she was actually learning when she was asleep. But
Yeah.
it's not when they're dead asleep, but it is that time before they fall asleep, and even when we're waking up, that our brains have these alpha waves that are extremely powerful for absorbing information. So it's great to play it at nap time and bedtime. Another time is in the car, as I said with that little boy. And we did a really fun thing when Taylor was little. We carpooled to her preschool, and so I made the little chart for them with the apple song on it. And I had one for her friend Allie and one for her. And I put the music on and I said, maybe you guys want to look at this. And so they were sitting in the back seat, all buckled in, and they're looking at the music, and they started following along with their finger. And they thought that was really fun. And so then we would hop in the car to drive to school, and they would say, are we going to do our music? So it was something that they really looked forward to doing. But that can certainly be a lot of fun. A lot of parents like to play my music just in the background when kids are playing, just playing with their toys, because it sets kind of a relaxing atmosphere. I know teachers use it at resting time, at school,
Yes.
kindergarten or preschool, so it has a lot of benefits that way. And then I think maybe one of the most important things is bringing the music to life. So for example, I have the little song about, if you had one red crayon and then you got one blue, how many, so it goes on like that.
Yes.
How many crayons would you have? You'd have a total of 2. And then it says the equation, one crayon plus one crayon makes 2 crayons all together. So as it goes along, it gives this whole language of math. So I thought, one time I was watching Taylor, and she was in the kitchen, and we had this rug, and it had octagons on it. It had 8 octagons. So she's jumping around on this rug, and I hear her singing, and she's saying, 4 plus 4 equals 8. 4 plus 4 equals 8. And I thought, whoa, that's not on my CD or
No,
my.
you don't go that high.
It was a tape at that time, so no, it was not. It wasn't there. So I thought, oh my gosh, she's taking the language of math and she's putting it into her own world and making up her own equations. And I thought, this is really a great thing.
Yes.
Another thing I did with Peyton, when she was little, there's a song in there, 10, 20, 30, counting up
Yes.
to 100 by tens. So when she was kind of little, we were playing with money, and I took out a bunch of dimes, and I said, I said, when we say 10, the dime is like 10 pennies. And we actually took 10 pennies and we showed how they're the same thing and all that. And I said,
Yes.
but this is a bother with all these pennies. It's too much stuff to count. But so we can count this way, and we can do it easier with that song that you know. And so we would sing it and again count the dimes at the same time. So that was kind of fun. And another song is the opposite song. That's a great one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a great one for learning. And opposites definitely get children thinking at a higher level. It's a wonderful thing to do with them. And in that song, we talk about rocks and bricks are heavy and feathers and kites are light. So get a rock, get a brick, and talk about how they feel, and throw one and see which one comes to the ground the fastest. Or don't throw rocks at buildings though, right now.
Right. Yes.
Anyway, so that definitely is another way to help get involved.
That is so neat. I never thought about some of those ways to kind of bring those songs that they know so well to life. And I love the example of your daughter just saying 4 plus 4 equals 8, and taking the melody from your song and putting it to what she's learning in math. And that's going to stick with her a lot longer by putting it to music than if she just is sitting there in the classroom learning 4 plus 4 equals 8.
Exactly.
So I know music can also help older children, and playing a musical instrument can sometimes help them learn better in other areas as well. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I think when you're talking about older children, you have the benefit of some passive learning too, where they can go on the internet and if they have to memorize facts and things like multiplication tables, or even with younger children, adding and subtracting and stuff. There's some darling apps and some things that can really help them with those skills. And
Mhm.
then some of the better apps ask them to respond after a while. They, first they supply all the answers, then they leave the answer out, and the child can try to think and respond, so they become more actively involved. But when a child learns how to play an instrument, they are really activating their brain. And nowadays we have brain scans where we can see that there is actually gray matter that is being created, and that more and more of these brain cells we talked about are being connected. And it even helps people learn how to be a multitasker a little better, because for example, in order to play the piano, you've got to have two hands going at once as you
Right.
advance. And so that actually develops the brain and makes people more able to do things that we kind of like to do in life. So
Yes.
there's definitely that advantage. I think there's some other advantages that you have to think about too when you're playing an instrument. It teaches children self-discipline, because you need to set some goals in order to accomplish it. You don't just sit down and all of a sudden you say, oh, I want to play the piano, and then you can. It's a
Right.
long road. And so I think that when children can set those goals and really work hard at something, they see the results of that, and that's very powerful. And the other thing is just creating music. When children can actually sit down at a piano and make those keys, make these beautiful sounds, they can start to learn more and more, and that in itself becomes rewarding. And they can play for other people. It certainly improves their self-confidence, because they can be in recitals or even showing off for the family. They know that if they really want to show off, they're going to have to practice a little bit. I know my granddaughter Peyton wasn't so interested in showing us what she was learning with piano until she got pretty good at it. And then she couldn't wait to show us off. And we'd all come in and put on a show, and we'd go to her recitals. And it was a very, very wonderful experience for her.
That is so neat.
So certainly, I think when you think back on the power of music, you realize that it's so valuable, even from prenatal, how we can offer that to babies when they're in utero, all the way through our lives. We even have stories about people in nursing homes that have bought our music, because a lot of times when we're really old, we go back into our early childhood, because those neural connections are so strong and they're so enduring. And so that music that comforted them when they were children can also comfort them when they're so old, because it has such a lasting power. So when you apply that to learning facts and you put the music together with learning, you've really got something powerful. And that's what my music has been all about.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. And when you talked about putting learning to music and even just a repetitious beat, I still remember I was pretty young when this happened, but for one of my classes, we had to memorize the order of the presidents. And so we came up with a beat that we could put it to. And what's funny, I was probably in third or fourth grade, but my mom was telling this story to someone else, and she asked me about it. And I don't remember the whole thing, the exact order, but like the first phrase and maybe part of the second one, I actually still remember it, and I still remember the beat that we put that to. And that was a long time ago.
Isn't that great? You know what that reminds me of is when Taylor was in school, when she was in 8th grade, I was a chaperone when they went on this trip back to see Williamsburg and New York and, our Washington, D.C. and our heritage and everything. So I had 4 girls, junior high girls. They're they're a entity all of their own.
Right.
Anyway, um, they definitely had a lot of challenges with some of the things about the trip in learning. They had things that they had to memorize. This was a particular kind of school where they had a lot of things that were expected of them. And so when I had two of these little girls in my room, and they were really having trouble with it. They just were so defeated, and they thought, I just don't think I can learn, I can memorize all this stuff. And I said, I think we can put this to music and we can make it a little bit easier, because they were in the choir at school. So it was like a perfect fit. And they got all excited, and we did what you're talking about. We put it to music and they learned. So
Yeah.
music definitely has a way of, as I said earlier, it has a way of activating different systems in our brain.
Absolutely.
Very, very
It is
valuable.
so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting close to the end of our time. I can't believe it, but I would like to ask you one question that I'm asking all of the experts in this series. You have obviously come a long way on your journey since you were a new mom, but if you could go back in time and give yourself one main piece of advice, what would that be?
I think it's hard to choose one main piece, because I think, what the most important thing is to really enjoy your children and play with them and listen to them and empower them. I think the one thing that I did do with Taylor that I'm so pleased about is that I really, I wanted her to be strong and independent. And I had this little phrase that I thought, I'm never going to do anything for her that I can teach her to do for herself. I wanted her to feel like she was a strong, independent kind of person. And yet I also had boundaries for her. And I know that parents have to be firm but fair. But I know that she was a very strong little person. And I had one friend who thought that I was perhaps giving her too much power, because she was so tiny, and would speak to me, and I gave her 100% of my attention when she wanted to say something. I thought that she deserved that. And so she said, boy, you could be raising a monster here. And I told her, I said, but I'm not raising a pet. I'm really raising a little person that I want to be strong and independent and, successful and happy in life.
Yes. And I think that's so important to look at those qualities that you want them to possess as an adult and allowing her to do the things that she's capable of doing instead of doing it for her. Yes, it might be faster sometimes if you do it for your children, but they're not learning anything from it that way. The more we allow them to learn and explore and grow on their own, the more capable they will become.
It's so
They'll
true.
rise up to that.
It's so true. I mean, I even taught her how to scramble her own eggs when she was 3 years old. She'd
That's
sit up there
impressive.
on the stool, and we would talk about, oh, it's changing from a liquid to a solid. Look at this, and look at this. You're doing this all by yourself. You're such a big girl, and all that. So,
Yes. And look at all those life lessons that she's learning. She's learning how to cook at three
yes,
years old and
yes,
learning about changes of states from, liquid to solid. And those are all concepts that will serve her well, that I'm sure served her well as it would grow.
well, you can certainly put learning into every kind of little thing you do in the day, whether you're in the
Yes,
grocery store or whether you're just in the house setting the table with silverware. There's always opportunities to count and learn and talk about colors
absolutely.
and all of those things.
Yes. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being here with us and sharing your background and just all of the wonderful things that your music has to offer. And I really hope that everyone checks out Barbara's music for their little ones. It's something that is so, so wonderful. And I encourage you to check that out and just bring music into your home.
Well, I just want to thank you again for inviting me, and I want to thank you for what you're doing for mothers, because I wish I had had something like you. I mean, I wish I'd had the kind of advice that you're putting out there for people. When we were raising children, we depended on books, and I read everything I could get my hands on, but to have live conversations with other kinds of people and moms like yourself is really invaluable. So thank you very much.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed this as much as I did. If you have any questions, anything that resonated with you, feel free, hit reply to the email. Let me know your biggest takeaways. We are on this journey together, and let's all stay connected as we go through our journeys. So hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you.